This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Hello friends, my name is Céline and welcome to a new knitting podcast episode in which I share all of my recent finished objects, works in progress and yarn acquisitions. I believe this is episode 10 of my knitting podcasts. I don't actually film them that often just because, truth be told, I don't knit fast enough. Of course, I always keep you guys up to date with what I'm currently working on in my other videos that aren't necessarily a typical knitting podcast episode, but my last one does date back 2 months. So it's for sure time to sit down and give you a proper update. Before I jump into it, I wanted to talk about what I'm wearing. It's camisole number 4 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. This is a relatively basic top knitted in broken rib with fingering weight yarn. It's got some nice I-cord straps. It's for sure a summer staple for me. I worked with one strand of pure silk by Knitting for Olive, which is incredibly lightweight, really good on the humid days because this material does a great job at keeping you dry. I've got another camisole knitted in the same exact yarn in one strand of it too, and both of them just feel like you've got nothing on when you wear them, which is so incredibly amazing on really hot days. If we look at it from the thermal perspective, pure silk is just the most perfect summer fiber in history. However, it does pose one drawback in my opinion, which is that it stretches over time, specifically if you hold it single. I have knitted another garment holding 2 strands of the pure silk together, and that piece has shown absolutely zero signs of stretching. But it's just fascinating to see how the same fiber acts when it's held single versus double. So in this case, when it's held single, I've noticed quite a lot of stretch in the strap over time. With this pattern, it's an easy fix. I can just cut it, unravel a bit, and then Kitchener stitch it back together. I have been lazy and I've not done it yet, but I do like to believe that the silk has now stretched to its maximum so that when I'll get to the strap to shorten it, it won't then stretch even more and I won't have to shorten it again further down the line. But other than the stretch in the straps, I adore this yarn. As far as the camisole number 4 pattern goes, it was so slow to knit up because it's like on 3.5mm needles. It's broken rib. It was a little bit of a pain for me personally, but I got through it in the end. I also think I only use like 1.5 skeins, which is pretty cool. So that is what I'm wearing. Let's move on to the finished objects. The last couple months have been my skirt era. I have finished 2 skirts. This first one I am so proud of because 2 weeks ago I posted a video titled 10 knitting plans I'm committing to for real this time, in which I showed 10 knitting plans for which I already have yarn. And one of those patterns is skirt number 1 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. And guess what your girl went ahead and did? She knitted skirt number 1 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. I kept my word and used up those skeins of Isier Aran Tweed in the shade Confetti and the mohair, which was Gepard Kidsetta in the shade 608, I believe. This is what came out of that yarn cocktail. And listen, I love the summer, but now that I have this, I also can't wait until autumn and winter. This is a very simple skirt. It's all over stockinette, a simple wide band, non-rolling edge at the hem, knitted top down, worsted weight gauge. These things are pretty common, but you see, I don't usually knit skirts, so it's a very exciting time for me. First of all, it's so fast to knit. It's such a delight. I want to say gauge is 14 stitches, which is really chunky. I knew that that was the gauge. I had seen a lot of the photos, but in my experience, I hadn't quite realized how chunky the skirt actually is until I made it, which absolutely does not mean anything bad. It's not like the skirt looks weird or anything. It actually looks incredible. I just hadn't realized it was so wintry for some reason. But you know, that's actually nice for me because I don't wear skirts in the winter and I don't have any wintry skirts. This one will keep me so toasty and I'm very excited to start integrating skirts into my winter wardrobe. So that's a very fun step that I can look forward to. Let's talk about the construction of the skirt. So you cast on at the top, but you use provisional cast on so that the stitches are kept alive and you can go back to them later on. You knit this length for the band double so that you have enough fabric to fold it and encase the elastic on both sides. The way the elastic is secured and stays in there is because you knit the stitches together with the provisional cast on stitches. So in here you have your elastic. I've only ever knitted this skirt and another one that I'll show you in a second, but in both of the patterns, there aren't instructions to keep the band open at one point, just in case you do want to change out the elastic in the future. So I applied a little modification and added a small opening for the elastic in case I want to access it. This modification happened at the cast on. So for the last 4 or 5 stitches, instead of using provisional cast on, I used the normal long tail method so that the stitches wouldn't stay live. It's at the back of the skirt inside, so you don't really see it. It's just really neat all round on the outside. According to the designer and the recommended ease, I should have knit a size small, but I didn't want a 2 to 4 centimeter negative ease. I wanted something drapier and more relaxed. I didn't want to be constrained by the skirt, so I opted for a size medium. I am so happy I did that. Even just trying it on, I can tell that I'll feel confident wearing it. So I'm very glad that I just trusted my gut instinct picking a bigger size. Once you're done encasing the elastic, you work German short rows to shape the back and also add fabric to it and length as well. There are increases on the sides all the way down. I most likely knitted my skirt a little longer than my favorite things did. As a result, I might also have knitted 1 or 2 more increase rounds. It is finished with a non-rolling stockinette edge and a simple regular bind off. I did attempt a stretchy bind off to begin with, just because a regular bind off has 0 stretch, and I was kind of worried of ripping the bind off with a weird leg movement or something. But unfortunately, that stretchy bind off just ended up kind of looking like my fringe. Like this was not cute. I unraveled that and bound off normally, and I think that's gonna be fine because the bottom of the skirt is pretty wide. I was just being paranoid. This skirt design is super simple, but I must say, I think it is super flattering on. The German short rows sit on the body really beautifully and harmoniously. I was kind of worried before blocking the skirt because the German short rows bunched up and created a really weird bulge, but that completely went away after blocking. But now let's talk about the star of the show. I can't believe I've yet to talk about it. The yarn, hello? She is so beautiful. Specifically talking about the Aran Tweed in the shade Confetti by Isier. I picked this yarn up when I was visiting Oxford at the Oxford yarn store. I didn't know what I was gonna make with that yarn, but when I saw it, I just couldn't leave it there. I needed to bring it home with me. It's so subdued but also out there at the same time, which makes it so special. So it's this medium tone gray filled with confetti in the shades of the rainbow. What I look for in my patterns, in the yarns, is unrecreatability. That's probably not a word, but being able to knit something that's completely personal that you'll never be able to find at a store, no one out there has, unless they're a knitter and they're using the same pattern and yarn as you. Having a one-of-a-kind piece like this, in this case given by this incredible yarn, is just an unmatched feeling. I should also warn you that the 2 yarns I used to make the skirt make up for a pretty itchy fabric. Fortunately, this is a winter skirt, so I will definitely be layering. It will not be placed directly on my skin, so I know that I'll be fine with that, but just FYI. You can probably tell by the look of it, but the Aran Tweed is definitely a rustic yarn. It's not your soft, velvety, airy material at all. I actually ran out of the Aran Tweed like 2/3 of the way in, so I had to purchase a 3rd skein, which was not from the same dye lot. The new dye lot was definitely pinkier. The first one leaned more green. Before I completely ran out of the old dye lot, I started introducing the 2nd dye lot so that I could alternate a couple rows and create somewhat of a gradient, and I don't think you can tell. Whenever I'm working with different dye lots, this is the way to mitigate the bad effects of it. Also, the Gepard Kidseta is shedding a little bit. It might just be sort of the first layer of shed, which is a relatively common thing for mohair. At some point, it just kind of stops shedding. And yeah, I'm just so excited to wear it with some tights and cute boots. I really need to up my boot game and buy a cute pair because I don't have any. In between projects, I'll take the opportunity to give the sponsor of today's video a shout out. Squarespace is a brand I've been working with for a good few months now. They have helped me keep up the frequency of my videos and also have supported me in creating my own knitting website website to house my original patterns. Squarespace is your all-in-one website platform for creatives to stand out online. It has made the process very easy for me and has also made up for my lack of knowledge in coding and website building. The platform has a myriad of features which truly make website building a minimal effort task. It gives you everything you need to offer services such as knitting classes or online knitting events and get paid all in one place. Something that I personally could never wrap my head around is the whole SEO thing, which is search engine optimization. Fortunately, Squarespace has integrated SEO tools that can help you get discovered fast with meta descriptions and auto-generated sitemaps so that you can show up on search engines more often and bring in more of your ideal customer. The admin side of running a small business is really not fun, so I've also been exploring Squarespace's invoicing features, which allow you to streamline your workflow with proposals, contracts, and seamless online payments. So if any of you Knitty friends are interested in building a Squarespace website, you can go to squarespace.com to start a free trial today. And once you're ready to launch your website, you can go to squarespace.com/Woozy By Céline and use code Woozy By Céline to get 10% off your first purchase of a domain or website. Let's move on to my second finished object, which is a sweater. I've not finished a sweater in so many months. I am prioritizing quality over quantity this year. After all, I would say this next one is pretty good quality, if I do say so myself. It's the Sweetheart sweater by Kutowakika. This is a pattern from her Knits to Wear book, so I don't think you can get it anywhere else other than if you purchase the book. It is a top-down seamless circular yoke all over lace sweater. The stitch motif kind of recalls the shape of hearts or also petals depending on how you see it. These are also alternated with these really lovely cables right here. My sweater ended up looking a little bit different from the original because I have applied quite a couple relatively significant modifications. I would say the most obvious modification is the fit and how my version is tight-fitting and has negative ease instead of positive ease. For reference, I knitted a size small, and in the pattern, the finished garment measurement at the bust should have been 86.5 centimeters, whereas mine measures 67 centimeters at the bust. So that's a pretty significant difference. I have to be honest with you, it wasn't necessarily fully intentional. It was more of a happy mistake. The designer makes this holding 3 strands of yarn together, 1 merino and 2 mohairs. Off the get-go, I knew that I wanted something a little bit lighter and not as wintry, so I decided to omit 1 strand of mohair. So I ended up holding 1 merino and 1 mohair. For some reason, I didn't think it would affect my gauge that much, but it did. And the other thing is that I didn't really care if I didn't match gauge exactly. I was happy for any variation, whether that would be a larger or a tighter gauge. I don't know what to say to justify myself, but I guess I was feeling specifically spiritual on that day and really trusting my destiny. My gauge turned out so much tighter than what the pattern intended, but coincidentally, perfect for that body hugging fit. So this is a little secret that I'm just telling you guys. Let's just pretend it was intentional. No, but jokes aside, I'm genuinely so happy this is how it turned out. All of my current knits that are in my wardrobe are so oversized and they swallow me up, and that's super cozy and all, but it's nice for a change to have something that's more form-fitting and a little bit girlier and that accentuates the body in a different way. It's just become a great source of variety amidst all of the knits that I've created so far. There's also another modification that I implemented, which is also pretty significant, I would say, is that I didn't knit any ribbing. So in the original design, there's ribbing at the collar, at the hem, and at the cuffs. I didn't do any of it. So this is my collar, these are my sleeves, and this is my hem. It's just straight up lace everywhere. The reason behind this is also tied to the fact that I didn't want this to be a strictly winter sweater. I wanted to lighten up the look of it. I knitted this in spring, so I wanted it to be spring appropriate too. And I just thought, let the lace shine on its own without any disruptions. The way I did it is I just cast on what the pattern recommended, and instead of knitting rounds of rib, I just immediately started with the lace. The edging that you see on the collar is just your usual cast on. I did consider picking up stitches to knit an I-cord at first, but I thought I wouldn't do that because it does look quite neat anyway, and it nicely reprises the bind off that I picked for the sleeves sleeves and the body, which is, I'm actually not sure of the name, but essentially the way you do this bind off is you knit 2 stitches, then you take your left hand needle and insert it through the 2 stitches that you've just knit, and then you knit them together through the back loop. And that's the bind off. So from here you have 1 stitch on your right needle, and you'll knit a 2nd stitch, and then again left hand needle into the 2 stitches, knit them together through the back loop, etc., etc. This makes up for a nice stretchy bind off, similar to the regular bind off, but yeah, it's just way stretchier. Look at that. At times it can also flare out a bit, but in this design I thought that was actually really cute. This bind off is actually the one I tried on my skirt number 1 at first, the one I told you that swooped out too much. It just didn't really work with the overall A-line figure of the skirt, so I ended up unraveling. But usually that bind off is my absolute favorite one for stockinette. So you know, when your piece doesn't end in 1x1 ribbing and you can't do tubular cast off, this is the one that I go for. I will leave a link in the description box. I actually learned this bind off from the ranunculus pattern. That's how I cast off the sleeves, and ever since I've been obsessed. It just looks absolutely stunning. It's neat, it's clean, it flows into the stockinette fabric so nicely. I know this is not entirely stockinette, but the base of it is, and I think it just does wonders at giving you really good stretch without flaring out too much. Now I know that I've said that it was flaring out too much in my skirt number 1. In the back of my mind I'm a bit suspicious and think that it could have been maybe fixed with blocking. I didn't try it in the end, so I don't actually know, but I really recommend this bind off if you're binding off stockinette, and if you're worried about it flaring, you can try a smaller needle and that'll fix the issue. The 3rd modification I applied to this is making the sleeve into a bell sleeve. If you've watched a few of my videos, you may have caught me mention that I love a bell sleeve. Oh my gosh, it's my favorite sleeve shape. So whenever I can, I'll make something into a bell sleeve. Well, not always, but I do tend to do this. Right here, which is about 2/3 down the sleeve, I'd say, I put 2 increases and then 2 more increases here. So at the end of the sleeve, I had 4 more stitches than what the pattern intended, which is not a lot, but it is enough to give you a bell shape. It is a slight bell shape, it's not like dramatic. It's just the type of amount that I love. You might be wondering how hard it was to integrate those increases considering that the lace wraps all around the arm. In reality, that's not the case. This is something you can't see in the photos, but there is a stockinette channel that interrupts. It's in between the lace repeats, and that's where Kika actually put some decreases at the start of the arm, and that's also where I placed my increases later down the arm. The lace motif is cable, petal, cable. Here you can see a cable, not a petal, but a stockinette section and another cable. So in this stockinette section is where you would do the increases or the decreases, whatever. This was a pretty cool discovery. I would usually expect to have to decrease or increase in pattern, which is so much more complicated, but here it's simplified and you just do it in stockinette. I do want to highlight how easy it was to read this pattern and just execute it. The instructions just do the work for you in a way that I thought was really impressive. It was so smooth, which makes me really excited and keen to knit other patterns from this book by Kutova Kika. Because of my difference in gauge, I've had to knit way more row repeats, so I just have more petals and more rows than recommended. I don't really know how close my lengths are to that on the pattern. I just never really follow length instructions. I just play by ear, try it on, see what fits and what hits me right, and then I'll bind off whenever I feel like I have to. The stitch pattern and pattern repeat is very engaging and fun. It did take me a while to learn it by heart, however, because it's not the most intuitive thing in the beginning, but I guess that's the case because on the circular yoke you're just constantly increasing, so the stitch count is changing all the time. The body and the sleeves is when the stitch becomes constant and easier for you to grasp what the pattern and repetition is without having to look at the book. I have yet to weave in this end at the back, but so far I've kept it just to help me identify the front from the back because this piece does not have shaping, so it's quite hard to tell which one's the front, but I'm planning to weave that in and maybe embroider a couple stitches with some colorful thread on the inside. Thread, I always say Fred with an F, thread on the inside so that I can mark the back that way and know how to put it on. I was kindly gifted yarn to make this piece by West Wool, which is Stephen West's yarn brand that he sells at his Stephen and Penelope yarn shop in Amsterdam, which, by the way, I cannot wait at some point to visit Amsterdam and film a knitter in Amsterdam and pay the shop a visit. That will be super exciting. I can't wait. I don't know when it'll happen, but it will happen. I got sent 2 beautiful yarn qualities from their line. The first one is Bicycle, which is 100% South American merino wool. This is fingering weight. We've got 175 meters or 191 yards in 50 grams. Recommended gauge is 26 stitches. It's in the shade Corduroy, which I found is definitely in my palette, which I don't know what palette that is, but looking at the shade, it's probably a fall or a winter palette or something. There is this really pretty ply here that gives the yarn some nice texture. It is quite squishy in the skein, which suggests that there's quite a lot of air incorporated in the fleece of this particular sheep. And it is quite light and airy, relatively dry, I would say. On the one hand, it's not overly rustic, and on the other it's not super silky or anything, so it finds a really lovely balance. The touch of it is quite original, and I can't really think of another yarn that feels the same, which is really nice. And also this color is just to die for, isn't it? So good. They've actually increased their color range to 100 colors in the Bicycle and Tandem yarn qualities too, which is amazing. We love being spoiled for choice. And moving on to their glow hair, this one's great because it's 64% mohair and 30% mulberry silk, which is a higher quantity of silk than your average mohairs. Usually the ratio is 70% to 30% silk. Here we've got the extra 6%, which makes it super silky. Something quite interesting to look at is how the color and the dye translate from yarn quality to the other. So this is how they match. This is the resulting fabric of using them together. This is one of those mohairs that has a lighter silk core. It's not white, it's still the same color, but it is lighter. And this is good if you want to bring some dimension back into your fabric, specifically in stockinette that can be a bit flat. I usually tend to prefer a mohair strand that has the silk the same color as the fluff, but that's really just personal preference. I've mentioned this sweater is body hugging, so it touches my skin directly, full on, everywhere, and it's given me absolutely zero issues. Now you have to take into account that I'm not sensitive to mohair, but that doesn't mean that mohair feels like cashmere on my skin. Just because I'm able to wear it all throughout the day doesn't mean that I'm completely oblivious to it being uncomfortable. This one I seriously don't even realize or think about it when I have it on. Of course, if you know you are super sensitive to mohair, I wouldn't recommend knitting something so tight-fitting. If you are a super sensitive girly and still haven't given up on the fiber, this West Wool one is a really good one to try. The mohair does shed a tiny bit, but I feel like that's kind of normal. Like, you know, I was telling you, it's even doing it on my skirt number 1 with my Gepard Kitsetta, so I think most mohairs just have that initial like shedding period. I have worn this a lot and it's got zero pilling, which is great to see. I love my sweetheart and I cannot wait to wear her more this year. Moving on to the third and final finished object. This is the Flow Knit Skirt by Moonchain. Now, this is a maxi skirt. It's hard to hold up while I'm sitting down, so here's a video of me wearing it. This was a really big project for me, a big deal. It took a long time. The work behind it was a lot, and it also introduced me to this new feeling of knitting skirts, and it's inspiring me to consider dresses and, you know, venture out away from just sweaters and tops and cardigans. I've already talked about this design in my previous video, but to summarize, it's knitted top down, has an elastic in the waistband encapsulated in the same exact way as skirt number 1. The only difference with this is that the waistband is in garter stitch, but you put the elastic in the same way. And here I didn't have the promptness to leave an opening for the elastic, which is a little bit of a problem because I chose a white elastic. Like, what was I even thinking? So you can see through it and it gives it a little bit of a cheap look, and it would have been so perfect to just replace it with black elastic at some point, but I didn't leave an opening. So it will be a way more painful job where I'll have to perform some sweater surgery. But this, you guys, is why you should put an opening for your elastic. Whatever, let's move on. Let's talk about things that put me in a good mood, like this pattern being made to measure. You just measure your waist. You work out the stitch pattern, the stitch count and all of that, so it's super size inclusive, which we love. You can decide how long you want it, which is why I decided to go for a maxi skirt, because I love a good maxi skirt. The lace starts under the waistband and just carries on the whole way down. Beautiful. Wow, so much work. I can't even. I think this was 7 skeins of drop spell I used in the shade black. This pattern does involve shaping, not in the form of short rows, but rather of increases and augmenting the pattern repeats along the circumference to make space for the widest points of the body, so the hips and also the back. And the shaping is invisible, like you really have to look at the pattern repeats to figure out where it is, which means that you can twirl the skirt around your body however you want, so that then you can have the slit sit wherever you want, at the side, at the front, or at the back. It's all knitted in the round until the point where you want to start knitting your slit, and that's where you transfer to flat knitting. I was saying in my previous video when I was talking about this that it does include a teeny bit of crochet at the hem just to finish off and give it a cute edging. There are a couple rows of like scalloping. Good chance for any knitters that have not ventured into crochet to give it a little try. If you're scared of crocheting, this is a pretty small commitment. It's only a couple rows. I'm pretty sure I didn't work the last row of crocheting that's in the pattern just because I really liked these sort of wider scalloped edgings. The last row I think is like more of a picot situation, but I really enjoyed these, so I kind of stopped early. The lace pattern is made up of these eyelets and knit 2 togethers and SSKs, or knit slip passover, something like that, I can't remember now. And then that's alternated with a couple rows of garter, which breaks it up and makes it super interesting. Please excuse the minor interruption. My phone died and now it's later. It's been a second. I redid my hair, touched up the makeup, and now I'm ready to carry on. Drop Spell is the perfect yarn for this project, especially if you're opting towards making a maxi skirt. You have to account for the fabric stretching because it weighs itself down. So a yarn like this is exactly what you need because it holds shape really well. I found that my skirt stretched only about 2 to 3 centimeters, 4 at max, only the first time I wore it, and then it kind of stopped there. It didn't stretch any further the other times that I had it on, which is great. So that leads me to think that a good way to approach this is to knit the skirt to a few centimeters before the length you want to achieve. Then maybe hang it on a hanger for 1 or 2 days to give it some time to weigh down on itself, and that's when you can determine whether you want to bind off right away or maybe add another few centimeters. But I think that's a good way to gauge and control the length of the piece without it stretching way beyond what you want it to. I've been asked a few times if this black yarn is a magnet for white fluff, and I would say that it depends. So if you wear this skirt with a super fluffy mohair cardigan, for example, rest assured you'll be absolutely inundated in mohair fluff. But I usually wear this with a cotton t-shirt, so it doesn't give me issues. Granted, being a knitter, my whole entire flat's covered in some sort of yarn fluff, so I'm not gonna lie, it does collect some of that, but it's not too noticeable. And I just lint roll it before leaving the house, and it actually keeps nice and clean while I'm out and about. So in my experience, there's not been significant frustration towards the skirt collecting a lot of fluff. In hindsight, I would still knit it in black. I also think it's a good design for a dark color because the lace shows up really pretty. Speaking about the see-through qualities of these, so obviously while I was knitting it, I wasn't really sure how to wear it and how to make it appropriate because of course it's completely see-through. In the end, I tackled the issue by purchasing a black satin underskirt, which stops just before my slit, so that's perfect. Initially, I also thought I could get away with wearing some black biker shorts underneath, but I didn't like the fact that you could see the silhouette of my legs. That wasn't the look that I was going for, so the underskirt was the good way to go for me. I think that is all when it comes to my finished objects. So let's move on to my works in progress. I mean, the first one is basically also a yarn acquisition because I just bought the yarn for it, but I'm going back to Italy to visit my parents next week, and I thought, let me make my mama summer knit because she doesn't have any. It is scorching hot in Milan, so I wanted something appropriate for that, and I ended up settling on a ranunculus by Midori Hirose with the most summery yarn to ever exist, I think. It is Isier's Japanese cotton, which is sadly being discontinued because I think they have issues with the supplier and they can't get a hold of this anymore or something like that. I cast on a ranunculus. It literally doesn't look like anything right now. This is one of those projects that just needs a good block, but also needs to be layered with something so that the stitch pattern shows up, you know? The idea to use this yarn for this pattern I got from the Beautiful Knitters yarn shop here in London. They have a ranunculus sample made in this fiber. I think I actually tried that sample on camera for my 7 hours locked in a yarn shop video where I was locked in Beautiful Knitters for 7 hours, so I tried all the samples and you can see how gorgeous it's gonna turn out. This is 100% cotton yarn, but it looks and feels like paper. It also kind of sounds like paper. Like really thin raffia almost. It's so airy and dry, which is perfect for the summer. Of course, this is knitted in a super open gauge, so she's barely gonna feel it on her body once it's on. I've tried the Beautiful Knitter sample on with a small cami underneath, and it is such a gorgeous pairing. This time I picked this stupendous, super muted sage green. Oh my goodness, it's so beautiful. It's borderline fennel seed color, like the Knitting for Olive one. It's just a really special and uncommon shade. The color of this will be the most outstanding feature about it, I think. This is not my first time knitting the ranunculus pattern, and as always, it's super fun and engaging. It's so fast. Any yarn you can use on a 6mm needle. I made this in a day. I know that for the smallest size, if you make it short sleeved, you only need like 65 grams, which is a little over 1 skein. I got 3 skeins just in case. I think I'm making the 3rd size, but I'm pretty positive I won't have to crack into the 3rd skein, which who knows, I might have enough to make a second ranunculus for me. For reference, this skein of yarn weighs 50 grams and it has 315 meters in it. This is the shade 13, by the way. If you enjoy this open fabric, I think this is hands down one of the best summer fibers I've tried so far. Next work in progress. It's one I've been battling with for a few months. It's for my own design and it looks quite catastrophic right now. What is this? This is the first time I'll share the name of this pattern. I finally settled on one. It is my Alina cardigan and this is the top of it. I'm super sorry, but the needles are pulling the fabric at the bottom, so it's kind of hard to show. This is actually the same pattern as what I used to call my sugar cardigan before I found its official name. The first sample of this looks extremely different simply because of the yarn that I chose for it. In fact, the yarn selection process for this cardigan was completely inspired by the ranunculus by Midori Hirose, where she encourages you to just use whatever yarn you want, whether that be lace or fingering weight or DK or worsted, whatever, you can use it in the ranunculus pattern. So I wanted to do the same thing with my Alina cardigan. I'm working this on 12mm needles so that you can use anything from lace weight all the way up to super chunky. The yarn will completely dictate what your cardigan will end up looking like. And you can really see that in my 2 samples where they just look like totally different pieces. For this one, I'm holding 1 strand of Holskarn Lucia. It is a great mohair substitute. I don't have the label with me right now, but I'll put the specifications on screen. But it has some yak in there, a little bit of silk too, alpaca, I believe. So it's a perfect, less scratchy alternative to mohair. The look of it is essentially the same to mohair, but I would say the fluff is a bit more substantial. I love the fabric that it's forming. I think it's so peculiar and unique. In this shade, it's pretty Halloweeny, which is really funny considering that my first sample is so unicorn and rainbows and cotton candy. Something that's happened to me before with darker yarn is also happening with this yarn, and it's that the dye is kind of transferring onto the needles. So this is the original color. As you can see, they're quite darker, which doesn't change the functionality of them, but they'll just be a little bit different from my other ones once I put them back into my set. Surely there's a way to clean them. If you guys have any suggestions, let me know in the comments. I would be worried about wetting them, right? Because then that would ruin the wood. So I don't know. Let me know if this has happened to you and if you've been able to fix it. The way to avoid this issue is just use metal needles. I didn't use metal needles because I don't own any in 12 millimeter, but also metal needles are my recommendation, especially if you are working something like this, a fabric like this with lace weight. It just flows through way better, which actually leads me to the reason why this has taken so long. Because I'm working this on wooden needles, the stitches are just not flowing great. They're gripping onto the material quite a lot. The whole process and experience is a little bit clunky. I can't just get in the groove, get in the flow and have it fly off my needles. No, it's a little bit more awkward. If I had metal needles, that would not be the case. In fact, I'm just thinking, oh, why have I not bought metal needles? But I am committed to finishing the pattern. It will come, and you'll be the first to know. Next is another one of my own patterns, and this sample I'm making for my brother. I've decided to knit this pattern after him, so this will be part of the Mateo sweater collection. I say collection because I'm making two. So for Christmas, I made him the worsted weight version, and now I'm just knitting it in fingering weight. This is another one that doesn't look like much. We've got the top of the back panel. I've started on the first shoulder panel. The second one is not there yet, but we have some nice increases at the back. I recently found out that I much prefer this technique over like a German short row shaped back panel. The uniqueness of the Mateo sweaters will be the edgings, which will very much recall sweatshirt vibes, which I think is really cool in a knit. But overall, it'll be a nice basic drop shoulder. I'm kind of planning to include some modifications or different options that you can go for to make it more of a unisex pattern, such as body decreases to make it a little bit more feminine, and other features that can offer more variety within the simple design. So I'll see where it goes. I'll just play by ear. Let's talk about the yarn that I'm using to make this. Now, this is a very special yarn, which is also being discontinued. I don't know what's going on. Why are these yarn production companies taking away all these beautiful yarns from us? This is the West Yorkshire Spinners Exquisite 4-ply. Mine is in the shade Baroque, which is this beautiful deep lead color that oscillates between gray and blue. It's so beautiful and metallic looking without actually being metallic. So the composition of this is 80% wool and 20% silk, which I think is what gives it that sheen that's so gorgeous. It's so soft. So yeah, run before it's officially out of stock everywhere. I got mine from Beautiful Knitters. They have a huge stock of it there. They also have it in the lace weight. The colors are insane. I can't believe they're discontinuing it. That's super, super tragic. Of course, I'll keep you guys posted on how this knits up. I had put it on hold for a second while I was knitting all of my skirts. I think I'll have this done by my brother's birthday, which is at the end of September. So that actually works out quite nicely. And yeah, looking to release the pattern for this in the winter, hopefully. It's now time for the yarn acquisitions. I always feel guilty running through this section of the podcast because I'm always saying I need to go on a yarn buying ban, and then there I am just showing new yarn that I bought. But the main acquisition today is a gift, so that makes it fine. As I mentioned, I'm seeing my mum next week, so I thought I'd get her some yarn with which she can knit a nice winter sweater. So I decided on the Hey Mama Wolf Mokosh yarn. Did you know that Mokosh is made from the softest wool to get in Europe, Merino d'Arles? The rare breed takes care of the landscapes in South France and the French Alps. It's so soft. I used this to make my dad's cardigan number 8. I don't know. I made him a cardigan for Christmas. This one recommends a 24 stitch gauge and 32 rows on a 3mm needle. It's made in Turkey, it's 100% wool, and it's absolutely stunning. So this color that I picked is 03. It's somewhat similar vibe to the West Yorkshire Spinners. It's just more purple. I really hope she likes it. It's really hard to pick a color for my mom. My friend Claire classified this as very demure, which my mom is a very demure queen, so I hope it's perfect. I'm going to recommend she make a Dead Easy by Beautiful Knitters with this. The Dead Easy pattern has shorter sleeves, but I got enough to make a long sleeve. I grabbed 4 skeins of 100 grams, each containing 300 meters or 330 yards, so that should be quite enough. Hopefully she'll even have some left and we'll be able to make a matching accessory. Very chuffed to be gifting my mum a sweater quantity of yarn. If she'll like the color, she will be over the moon about it. I also love how affordable this yarn is. So 100 grams costs £14. So 50 grams is £7, which is super affordable. A bargain, really. I feel pretty good about this video's yarn acquisitions because the next skein was a gift from someone, which is amazing. Of course, I'm not accounting for the yarn that I bought in Barcelona. So I misbehaved then, but I already showed you guys that yarn in the Barcelona video, so it's not gonna be in this video. But anyways, this last acquisition is a stunning Zakami skein. This is in the shade Pallades, I think is how you pronounce it. It's 100% baby llama, fingering weight, 100 grams, 400 meters. If you don't know Zakami, it's beautiful yarn hand-dyed by a couple in Edinburgh. This specific shade is a creamy, pink and green, a little bit of yellow spectacle of yarn. It's got a really cute, fluffy halo. It also smells really nice. I'm quite into the sheep scent in my yarn. Of course, if it's too overboard, then I'm not into it. This one has that scent so slightly in such a pleasant way, in my opinion. And I'm really curious to know if you guys are like me and enjoy the scent of sheep in your yarn, or if you absolutely despise it. Please let me know in the comments down below because I'm so curious to see where we all stand. And look at that. We have gone through everything. Filming this video was a little bit of an adventure for me just because my phone can't take it anymore. She needs to retire. I need to buy a camera. Hopefully the editing has made it a smooth watch for you guys, but I also hope that you made some good progress knitting on your project while watching this video. Of course, let me know what's currently on your needles. As always, I'm super curious to know. If you want to write up your little knitting podcast in the comments, letting me know your recent finished objects, works in progress, and yarn acquisitions. In the meantime, I'll thank you for sticking till the end of this video. I always really appreciate the company. I will leave my Instagram on screen in case you'd like to follow my creations more in real time and hang out on there. I will say bye for now, and I hope to see you in my next video.